talk business, then let's turn it up a notch. It's your time to shine with Jafora Fox. It's all coming together. Just keep your eyes on God and tune in, and let's talk with Jafora Fox. Hey, Jafora Fox. Jafora Fox.
Hello and welcome to the Jafora Fox Show. Say hello and share the broadcast. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. I am your host, Dr. Jafora Fox, and I am so excited that you are here. I am an industrial organizational psychologist, and tonight we're discussing the behavioral pattern behind repeated return cycles. This is something many people experience, but do not always fully understand. Why do people return to situations, behaviors, relationships, environments, habits, and patterns they already recognize as unhealthy, misaligned, emotionally exhausting, or no longer beneficial to their growth? Many people assume that repeated cycles occur because someone does not know better, lacks intelligence, discipline, or awareness. But repeated return cycles are often much deeper than that. Human behavior is complex, emotional, familiarity is powerful, and awareness alone does not automatically produce behavioral change. One of the biggest misunderstandings people have is believing that knowledge alone changes behavior. It does not. Many people know exactly what they need to do and still struggle to do it consistently. Some people know they need to establish boundaries, but continue tolerating behaviors that drain them emotionally. Some people know they need to leave unhealthy environments, but remain connected to them because emotional familiarity feels safer than uncertainty. Some people know they need to stop certain behaviors, but continue repeating them because patterns become psychologically reinforced over time. Behavior patterns do not simply disappear because a person becomes aware of them. Awareness is important, but awareness is only the beginning. Many people become frustrated with themselves because they intellectually understand what needs to change, yet their emotional patterns, conditioned responses, fears, attachment systems, habits, and internal conflicts continue to pull them back toward what feels familiar. Sometimes people repeatedly return because it's familiar. It creates predictability even when that familiarity is unhealthy. Human beings are often drawn toward what feels emotionally known, even when it conflicts with logic, growth, peace, or alignment. Repeated cycles can show up in many areas of life. It can happen in relationships where people continuously revisit dynamics they already recognize as emotionally unhealthy. It can happen professionally when individuals stay in environments that no longer support their development, growth, leadership, or emotional well-being. It can happen personally through self-sabotaging behaviors, inconsistent decision-making, procrastination, avoidance, emotional dependency, or repeatedly abandoning goals and returning to comfort patterns. Many people are not simply struggling with motivation. They are struggling with behavioral conditioning and emotional familiarity because we're familiar. Does this resonate with anyone? Blessings, Prophetess Cherise. God bless you. Bless you, Elder Justine. Thank you so much for joining in. Does this sound familiar? Patterns, human behavior, where we repeat cycles. We stay in things too long, and we have to begin to count the cost. One important thing to understand is that repeated return cycles are not always about weakness. Sometimes they are connected to identity. When people have functioned with certain patterns for long periods, those behaviors can become psychologically tied to who they believe they are. Change can feel threatening because it requires people to function, respond, and choose differently, and to emotionally separate themselves from familiar behaviors. And that's not always easy. It truly takes a lot of work to move out of that space. If you stay in the same environments or attachments. And this is why change is not only behavior, change is also emotional, psychological, and identity related. Another important aspect of repeated return cycles is avoidance. Sometimes people know exactly what needs to happen, but change requires discomfort, confrontation, accountability, grief, uncertainty, or emotional separation. Avoidance patterns often keep people emotionally connected to cycles they intellectually know they should move away from. People may avoid difficult conversations, boundaries, grief, loneliness, failure, rejection, or the uncertainty that comes with growth. As a result, they continue functioning inside familiar cycles because emotionally it feels safer than disruption. And I tell you, this is so powerful. And it's not easy. But when you get to this space where you are aligned and you know and you understand that situations and things are not good for you, and you move out of that space, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to move out of spaces that are familiar, environments that are familiar, setting boundaries. This is also why self-awareness is so important. Self-awareness is not just about recognizing what happened, it's about recognizing what continues to influence your behavior. Many people can identify what hurt them, but they have not fully identified the behavior patterns connected to their responses, attachments, coping strategies, emotional triggers, or decision-making habits. If people do not identify the pattern driving their behavior, they often repeat the cycle in different forms, relationships, environments, and situations. That's why you find yourself repeatedly attracting the same things, repeatedly attracting the same people, find yourself in cycles, find yourself not being able to get out of cycles. Human behavior. There's patterns, there's cycles. If you watch and understand the pattern of a person and you begin to reflect, you will see that pattern. And when you know the pattern, you don't take things personal. It's a cycle. It's a pattern. When we talk about intentional behavior change, we also have to talk about accountability. Accountability is not punishment. Accountability is awareness connected to action. Many people remain stuck because they continuously revisit the same awareness without implementing consistent behavioral changes. Real change requires intentional action, emotional honesty, boundaries, behavior consistency, and self leadership. It requires people to become more conscious of what they tolerate, what they normalize, what they avoid, and what they continue returning to despite knowing it no longer aligns with who they want to become. And that is powerful. When you recognize that you no longer want to be in that space, you no longer want to be involved in that situation, you no longer want to be mistreated, you no longer want to be disrespected, disregarded. And when you come to that realization, you're in alignment. And then there's another step. There's the discomfort. You become in a space where, in my experience, I felt like it was grief because you are grieving that old self, the loneliness that comes with it. Another thing I want people to think about is the difference between emotional attachment and alignment. Just because something feels emotionally familiar does not mean it is aligned with your growth, peace, purpose, leadership, or well-being. Emotional familiarity can sometimes create attachment to cycles that no longer support healthy functioning. Many people continue returning because they confuse familiarity with alignment. They confuse emotional intensity with emotional health. They confuse repeated access with genuine connection. They confuse conflict with growth. And from a behavioral perspective, patterns become reinforced through repetition. Same thing. People do the same things. And when you really get in alignment in space, you can recognize the same patterns, the same cycles that people go through. The more people repeat behaviors without interruption, the more psychologically familiar those patterns become. This is why intentional interruption is necessary. People have to be willing to pause, reflect, assess, and respond intentionally different. That's why you spend time helping people, you spend time in spaces wanting people to change, and they're not going to change until they're ready to make the change. And that's in a space where sometimes people get frustrated because you are wanting people to change. You're wanting people to make different decisions. And it's not going to happen until that person makes the change, intentionally makes a decision, be accountable for the part that they play. And it's a lot that goes into what that looks like. You have to be willing to put in the work to make the change in your life. Behavior interruption requires awareness, but it also requires consistency. You have to be consistent. And I know for several weeks I have been talking about the word consistency. You have to be consistent. You start something, you have to stay consistent because it is working. May not be working as fast as you want things to work. But if you keep putting one foot in front of the other, and if you are looking for change and you want something different in your life, you have to stay the course. As they say, trust the process. One decision alone does not always break a long-standing cycle. And just because you make the decision to do better, to be better, you still have to continue in the flow. You've made the decision, now you got to put in the work to make the change. Repeated intentional choices are often necessary to create sustainable behavioral change. Just because you say, I'm going to do something different, it takes you to continue on that journey for change. And if you continue in that space, it will change. And this conversation is not about judging people for repeated cycles. It is about increasing awareness. Many people are operating from emotional conditioning they have never fully examined. Some behaviors are connected to survival patterns, attachment patterns, learned responses, emotional deprivation, unresolved experiences, fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of failure, or fear of being alone with themselves. Human behavior is layered, and understanding those layers is important if people truly want to grow. This is some powerful, powerful information. If you can connect with this psychological behavior patterns that continue in our lives, the people around us. I also want people to understand that growth is not always immediate. Sometimes people intellectually understand something long before they emotionally align with it. That does not mean growth is impossible. It means behavioral change often requires intentional internal work, emotional processing, self-awareness, and consistency over time. AKA, you got to do the work. You got to put in the work. It's not easy. It's nothing dropping out of the sky. If you want change, you have to be the change. You have to be the one to do that. Even as believers, we are in partnership with God. If there's something that you are believing God for, there is a requirement from you, a requirement from me. God is not Santa Claus. It's not dropping out the sky. You can't wave a magic wand and voila, and things change and they appear. You must put in the work. The intentional work on yourself, the intentional work on your goals. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." There's a purpose and a plan that God has for us as his children. If you believe you're in partnership with God, you must do the work. You must pray and you must do the work. And the goal is not perfection. The goal is awareness that leads to healthier functioning, healthier decisions, and greater alignment. As an industrial organizational psychologist, I focus on human behavior, decision making, emotional patterns, self leadership, and personal and professional functioning. Human behavior is pretty powerful. I'm passionate about this kind of stuff because I know that working on yourself, that putting in the work, that showing up. I was thinking about something earlier that I realized that, I want to show up more for me than I do for anyone else. And usually that's the flip side of it. We show up for everybody else but ourselves. Show up for you. God said to me, show up, do your best, and watch me do the rest. And in my life, I'm going to keep showing up because I'm going to give God something to work with. Human behavior affects every area of life. There's that faith component, and there's the other side of that. That's the psychological component that I believe that coexist together. You have to trust and believe, and you have to put in the work. The Bible says faith without works is dead. That means you have a responsibility to do your part. And human behavior affects leadership, relationships, communication, work environments, emotional regulation, boundaries, confidence, performance, and overall well-being. Understanding behavior helps people become more intentional in how they function personally and professionally. Understanding human behavior. What is that? It's understanding the behavior of yourself and of someone else. And when you do that, I promise you, it will help you. You won't take things personal. You will know and understand that that's a pattern, that's a cycle. And then you as a person have to make the decision whether or not you want to stay in that pattern, in that cycle. You're pouring into people and things that people are not willing to do their part to make the change, to do the work. They're waiting on other people to do what needs to be done. They're not helping themselves. And I do believe that we all need an inner space in our lives where we need someone to help us. And I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful to have a village of people that can help me, that play their part in helping me. But you have to be responsible for yourself. You have to take on that responsibility for yourself. And so tonight I want to leave you with this question. Where in your life are you repeatedly returning to something you already recognize no longer aligns with who you want to become? Is the cycle connected to emotional familiarity, avoidance, fear, attachment, conditioning, comfort, or uncertainty? What behavior keeps repeating? And I want you to take some time to look at that. Look at that with people and others. What patterns keep resurfacing? And what intentional behavioral changes are necessary if you truly want different outcomes? You should want a different outcome. You shouldn't want to be doing the same things. You should want something different. God has more in store for you and for me. And so I thank you all so much for joining and tuning in. I appreciate it. Hello, Peggy. God bless you. Love you. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. Good evening, Brenda. God bless you all. Thank you so much for joining and tuning in. If you would please share the broadcast, subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I thank you so much again for tuning in, for being a part of the Jafora Fox show. I thank you for your support. And so thank you for joining me for episode 15. The topic is the behavior pattern behind repeated return cycles. I appreciate everyone who continues to engage in these conversations surrounding human behavior, self-awareness, decision-making, emotional patterns, and intentional behavioral change. And as we continue exploring the connection between awareness, behavior, and human functioning, I invite you to join me for episode 16 on Tuesday, May 19th at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Our next discussion is titled The Psychological Conflict Between Awareness and Behavioral Change. And in episode 16, I will examine why awareness alone does not always lead to change and why many individuals continue to repeat behaviors they intellectually recognize are no longer aligned with their growth, well-being, leadership, or functioning. If you want something different, you have to do something different. And we'll discuss emotional familiarity, behavior conditioning, avoidance patterns, internal conflict, self-sabotage. Sometimes people are self-sabotaging themselves. They think they're not good enough. They think that I have nothing to say. They think that there's no way that anyone would listen to me. They think that I can't do that job or I can't do that assignment. And so you began to self-sabotage. I'm not good enough. I don't have enough financial resources to make that happen. And we create so many excuses. And the disconnect between knowing and consistently doing. Understanding behavior is deeper than simply knowing better. Human behavior is often connected to emotional patterns, conditioned responses, identity, attachment, fear, and familiarity. This conversation will explore the psychological tension between awareness and intentional behavior change. And thank you for being a part of these conversations. And I look forward to seeing you for episode 16. Have a good night and God bless you.
Jafora Fox, let's talk business. And let's turn it up a notch. It's your time to shine with Jafora Fox. It's all coming together. Just keep your eyes on God.